Hey, welcome back to On the Line, a fishing podcast. We talk about bass baits and the big moments on the water. I'm your host tonight, Tim Boyden, and thanks for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions at all, and or just friendly comments. You guys, thanks a lot. We're gonna move into our next segment, which is basically new to us, rigged and ready. And Cole's gonna kind of take the lead, I think, or Tony, you on just
Yeah.
motors in general, and we're going to also talk about Perry, what we think our thoughts, who's going to win Perry, and kind of discuss that. Leave a comment about who's going to win Perry. So, anyway, Tony,
Yeah, we'll come back to Perry at the end. And
yeah, it'll be
so
interesting.
if you're watching right now, put who you think's going to win, or who's your money on at Perry, and we'll come back to it.
Yep.
But Cole, reason we asked him to do this,
Yep.
And also a shout out to Joe Bailey, who couldn't make it, and so we thought we might have a little extra time, and Tim and I have been really wanting to do something like this, not just trolling motors, but also kayaks and give different people and their experiences, because maybe you want to upgrade, maybe you're buying your first kayak. With that, maybe you want to buy a motor, right? It's trolling motor. Cole's got a lot of experience. I'll let you talk about your experience with it, Cole, but we're going to talk about some of the things we're talking about is bow versus stern. Do we want, what bolts do you want, type of batteries, safety, lots of different things. But I'm going to turn it over to Cole, and we'll just kind of let him tell about his experience. And Tim and I will also talk about, our experience with our XI3s. And Tim's got an NK 300. Is that right? Yeah. So
awesome.
Go ahead, Cole.
Well, hey, I to give some background, so I got to say, okay, I went down this journey this year of all things motor. Now, I'm not beholden to a motor brand, but I was asked by Jackson to really lean in and say, okay, what are these plastic boats capable of? What can work, whether it's bow versus stern, what's safe, but ultimately, what kind of performance specs do we get out of them? So I certainly have so much information, we probably can't get to it today. But I definitely want to open it up to the folks that are listening to drop a comment with a question that you may have about motors. I am no expert. I'm just someone who has had the ability to get their hands on the majority of both bow and stern motors that are manufactured for kayaks to test them out. And so I'm going to share my thoughts, take them with a grain of salt. And I want to, bring up the elephant in the room here that some people are anti-motor, and that is okay. I could probably argue right alongside. I was a guy that started with a paddle first and see the value of it. But at the end of the day, being in Kansas, we have big, windswept, wide open lakes. And so for a lot of folks, the ability to get to those spots, to hold your spot is important. So I'll start out, though, with the conversation of bow versus stern. So, Tony, you had mentioned you rock the XI3?
Correct.
How do you have it set up? How did you get it affixed to your Hobie?
What's the
one objective?
One objective, thank you. I use the one objective mount. There's two screws that go into the handle on the front, and then two that go into the it's just basically a plastic piece that goes into where the hatch goes, the screws for the hatch, which are not adequate. I'm going to say it first. I've ripped it off. Video out there, check it out.
When you're doing 60 across the water,
I was doing 3.
And I'll ask that, Tony. So, what is your all out? What's your top speed that you're seeing on your graph?
So I'll say that I've got the Hobie PA12. Just to add that to it, if you don't know that already. If I've got top speed I got like 100 amp hour, 12 volt battery. If it's, regular wind speed, nothing crazy, 4.2. So I can pedal though with my Hobie, and I've had it up to almost 6.
There you go.
So
had both. And Tim, is that the same experience for you on the XI3?
Yep, about 4.2. Yep.
When you throw the NK300 on the back of it, what are you seeing then?
About 6.2, 6.3. No wind, 6.4.
Yep. So in the debate, it's interesting because you get one side that loves, okay, I have a motor that I can, it's pulling me along, so it's going to keep me oriented in a spot lock ability, right, with my bow facing into the wind. But often you sacrifice kind of the performance aspect, right? That you get off the rear of the kayak as far as speed. So I'll pick on Tim. You can only have one. What are you picking and why?
Probably the motor guide. But we had 30-mile-an-hour winds on Friday and had the NK on there, and I did all right with it. But I stand up a lot, and you can't stand up with you can with the NK 300. It's just rough. But overall, like if I'm fishing the Cedar Bluffs, a lot of trees, the XI3 wins out. If I want to get a hole shot and I'm going to the other side of the lake and I know it's going to be a long run and there's not going to be much wind, NK 300. But probably the motor guide, honestly, if I had to choose. Yeah.
And Tony, do you feel? I mean, I don't know if you've borrowed his at all. Do you have any thoughts?
I think he just said it. One of the things that I like to do, and he's really got me. Tim's really got me hooked on this, pun intended, but is the ability to stand up and use your remote, and steer while you're and not have to try to move your feet pedals. My biggest beef with it is I fish windy points a lot, and it's going to blow you in the windy point with your nose facing the wrong way. So I like my XI3, but honestly, I'm very curious to hear about some of the motors because I want to be able to have a motor on the back and either reverse or something that's spot locking me while I'm facing the bank. That's my dream motor, and I don't know if that's available, but we're going to talk about it, and maybe to go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the journey I had was really started out with, how fast you can go with a motor, bow versus stern, and really the question of can a bow motor go as fast as a stern motor? So because an NK 300, it's a 300 or 3 horsepower motor. It depends on the kayak. Could a bow motor do the same performance off the front? And the answer now is yes. That wasn't really the case several years ago. And again, you sacrifice a lot. So during this testing, I got my hands on the Garmin Kraken, which is a pivot style force motor that they built a 48-inch shaft for that you have to cut down, right? One of those, but it's a 36 volt. And then the new Lowrance Ghost as well, the Tarova that just rolled out from Minn Kota and Power Pole. And while some of them are 12 or 24 volt application, for those, that's just how much power, the size of the battery that they take. You really have to have that 36 volt to get the thrust that you're going to compete with off of the back, that 120 pounds of thrust. But with that comes an issue of weight, right? So I did a lot of testing, and by that, very scientific, putting them on a scale and weighing each motor to tell you what do they actually weigh. You see what you see online. And an example is that XI3, although what it says on the box, the motor itself, if you already have something to mount it to on the kayak, is around 32 pounds, maybe 34, depending on your setup, versus a motor like the Kraken, Ghost, or Power Pole, a 36 volt version is going to be between 47 and 55 pounds.
Oh, wow.
That's a big difference, right?
Yeah,
so the question is, what happens to your kayak when you add an extra 20 pounds to the very nose of it, right? So the first thing that was really interesting that I figured out with some of the design team at Jackson is, man, it's not the motor that determines how fast the kayak goes, it's the whole design. So your experience, Tony, of going 4.2 is what the vast majority of 12 to 14 foot kayaks that have a pedal drive system, the way that they're swelled, are going to go. Some will make it 4.4, some less. But it's interesting because you look at a Native Titan, that is one of the biggest kayaks on the market. It's actually going to be one of the fastest motorized because it's got such a flat, wide deck that some of these motors would actually move a 14-foot John boat faster than they're going to move a kayak because of all of the curvature that happens towards the bottom. So the thing that I always want to bring up to folks that are considering a motor is first thing is considering, does the bow of your motor make sense? And for me, I love it because that's where I spend my time, right? I'm going half a mile an hour along a shoreline, right? I'm spot locking, I'm making micro adjustments, but you lose the ability to make runs with it. So when you think about how do you want to put a motor on, you really have to consider weight. So I have to bring this up for folks. Always do the math on your boat. And I don't know, Tim or Tony, if you've done this. When you add up the weight of your motor, your batteries, all the gear that you bring, and yourself, I tell folks that you should be looking at a kayak where you're not under the max weight capacity, but you're at 75% of it. So an example, if you have a 500-pound weight capacity on a big kayak, I really don't want to see folks putting more than 400 pounds of total gear and weight on it, because you really do run into an issue of water egress that's going to happen when you spear waves and things. Going with that. And the funny thing is, it's all about how you mount them, right? And I was told some folks that most kayaks, I don't know one today off the shelf that's going to have enough plastic in the front end for some of these 36-volt motors that you don't need to reinforce it with like a one objective plate, an extra piece to back it, because they're not really going to handle it long term. And you put a lot of money into it. So spec wise, if you take the Xide 3 or a Tarova, it was interesting because I was very similar to Tony, 4.2 to 4.4, depending on the setup and speed. And then if I compared it to a power pole move on the same exact kayak, I was getting 6.5. If I trimmed it right, I was probably getting close to 7 miles an hour.
Man.
So pretty big difference, although most guys go, that's 2 miles an hour.
No,
it doesn't feel like 2 miles an hour when you're on a kayak, right?
Yeah.
So I got to tell a story, though, that kind of indicates. So in all of this testing that I was doing with these different brands, when you're going that fast, I never felt it in the Xide 3, but if you go to steer, when you're going all out, you get a little bit of wobble, right? And you kind of want to feel like it throws you out of the seat, but you adjust. I was heading out across the lake, and I tried to make a small movement going about 6.5 miles an hour. And that small movement registered as a pretty decent turn on the head of the trolling motor. And that kayak just went straight over. There was nothing. There was no stopping it. There was nothing I could have done to ride that one out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the risk, right?
Yeah.
That you run with that to get that speed off of the bow. But you got to learn pretty quickly to steer with your rudder, not the motor itself, at that speed. But of all those options, an opinion, if you guys want it, on those different motors, I never had a problem with my Xide 3. And I, in the years that I ran it, I know it's a brushed motor, so supposedly brushed motors won't last as long as brushless. So I have high hopes that the Tarova will really meet the mass market where they're at. It's essentially the Xide 3. But overall, the winner came out, and I'm going to get some comments for this. It's was the power pole. I've never seen a motor built so well. The components of that, I get why they charge what they charge for it. It's not for everybody. But if I was really serious about looking at something in that upper end range, I still really like the new Lowrance Ghost, if someone can figure out how to cut the shaft down a little bit.
Yeah. And you were talking to us, or you were telling us a story about that power pole, how it just eats the grass, like the grass is nothing for it.
And that is one big difference I noticed between an Xide 3 and a 36 volt like that power pole is I used to have to say, crap, I'm in grass. Let me pull the motor up. And now I'm definitely leaving it down and I'm just augering through it. I haven't found, between even lily pads, thick choke lily pads that are notorious for choking you out, I haven't found anything it won't go through. So I got to give it a testament there. But again, I sacrifice quite a bit of weight off the front of that. So if there was ever a tournament with 35 mile per hour winds, I might consider pulling it just because of the weight of the bow. Pull me out of the waves a little more.
Is that a triple prop or is that double? Does that have two?
It's triple.
Triple? Okay.
They rolled out a stainless steel prop and I laughed and thought, no. Like, this thing is not going to break. My kayak nose will break off before anything on this trolling motor breaks. So
I have a couple questions on that. So how long is that shaft on that one? Is it 36 or 40?
36.
And what's a cost? Is there only one model, right, at this point in time?
There for the kayak version, the 36-inch model, yeah, it's probably just shy of 5,000 for the motor.
That's steep.
It's about $1,500 over what you're going to pay for a Garmin Kraken that you would cut down. You don't have to cut these motors down, but basically any 36-inch pivot style. And when I say pivot style, these are not the ones you lift up that scissor down. They just they fold over.
Right.
That's really what you're looking for on a kayak. I don't agree that 36 is where the shaft length should be. I think 40, 42. These kayaks are getting bigger and taller off the water. I don't see, most guys, I don't know how tight yours is, how far down it goes before the locking collar hits, but most guys are right in that last 3 or 4 inches of their trolling motor.
Couple waves, you can actually hear it coming up and out.
Have you tested the Tarova? Is that right? Is that right?
I have.
And how fast did that go?
So the Tarova was almost identical to the Xide 3 in our experience. And again, if I'm comparing these all on the same kayak, because that's important. But it really has more to do with the thrust of that motor, and that motor is going to be right in that same range as the Xide 3.
About 55 pounds of thrust.
55 pounds of thrust, which is, people go, well, can I have a 12-volt motor that pushes 100 pounds of thrust? It's a motor issue at that point, right? You don't have enough juice to really push that voltage through that housing. So that's why you're going to see, you have to make the decision. Are you going to be a 12? They make some motors that are 12 or 24 volt, or are you going to be a 24, 36 volt person? And so you're either getting something that's lighter, or you're getting something that's heavier and faster. But you're not, both of them are going to be the same efficiency. And I can walk through that as far as how much battery they use.
Yeah. And so is the Ghost about the same as that as well?
Yeah. The big thing there is both the Kraken, the Ghost, and the Power Pole are all right in that 47 to 55 pound range as far as the weight of the motor itself. So you really don't gain anything. The Power Pole's the lightest by a few pounds. But they are all relatively the same. Feature-wise, some of the features that I really enjoyed, the Lowrance Ghost, their remote has very similar to Garmin to where it has a joystick, and that is really handy as a fisherman to not have to hit right, left, that you can kind of throw the joystick on the Ghost and it'll point the motor in that position of the joystick. Whereas the Garmin has that, you can kind of have it as an in motion where you kind of point it where you want it to go. And then Power Pole's pretty simple, but what a lot of guys find is that, I guess a question for you all, because people have to decide if they want that GPS feature. Do you use heading lock very often on your X?
Every time.
See, mine tracks off to the right every time I use it. I can't get it to go straight, so I'm not sure.
You've got to point it in that direction for like 10 seconds before you hit it, because it's at least that's what I found. If I
sometimes almost flip me on my kayak because I'm like, nope, that's not where I'm going. I'm going that way.
It needs to, the GPS this is just a complete guess. So Cole, maybe you can clarify this for me. But when I'm using my heading, I've noticed that if I just click it, it hasn't orientated itself in that direction yet. It feels like it's, if I just turned or moved, it's still, the GPS is not caught up yet. So if I find that if for about, even 5 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, if I stay in the direction I want to go before I click the heading lock or whatever it's called, then I will go the direction I want it to. That's what I found.
You probably are, my guess is, Tim, that you probably need to reset your motor and go through the setup where you spin it around a few times. What it is it's messed up on what true north is for you, or, straight ahead. And it's got to put that so it knows, if he's pointed this way, the motor's got to be canted, and so when you set your GPS, it's just off a notch or two.
Maybe I just go with it because the way I've been doing tournaments lately, I just see where it ends up taking me.
Yeah, they take you right to the fish.
Hell yeah, there they are. So, yeah.
But I would say for most, I'd love to get your guys' opinion, and anyone that wants to throw a comment in there.
Yeah.
I always tell folks, really figure out what you want your motor to accomplish for you. Some guys are very spot fishermen. They want to be anchored up. some are travelers, right? I want to cover water. I'm a power fisherman, and that should really change, not just what pro is telling you, what you see guys using out there. For most folks that aren't just purely going after speed, the bow, they're going to be happier with it on the water, unless they're hitting a lot of rivers, moving waters, things like that.
Mm.
But the Tarova is a great option, and I tell folks it's a great 12-volt setup. Right, it's kind of the only one we got. Let's be honest. There's not too many people in the game until you bump up to that 36 or 24-volt option. It's a little bit bigger and heavier.
And it comes back to, I think for a lot of people, if you're just getting into it, especially, or maybe you've been in it for a while, is it worth the cost, right? I mean, if you're only fishing, if you're fishing 500 acre or less places, right? Maybe you don't need a trolling motor. I know for me, what sold me when I was down doing the 10 killer last year at the Bassmaster Kayak Classic, whatever they're calling it these days. I think I went 60 to 70 miles in pre-fishing in the 2 days of the tournament, pedaling, and I would come over because I didn't have forward-facing sonar or anything like that at that time. I was going over the top of like brush and stuff, and the wind was blowing 15 miles an hour, and I just couldn't stay on it. And it was 30, 40 foot of water. So it's not like I'm throwing an anchor out to hold me on it, right? So I could have, but I got back and I put everything in the cart and hit send for me, because I was like, if I'm going to fish anything of size, I really need something. I will say that the other thing that I don't like about my trolling motor is I don't know how many times I've hit my my rod when I'm side casting, when I'm sitting down on the front of my bait on my motor. Yeah, but that would be nice to have a rear mounted one for that. But that was the main reason I bought it, is because I couldn't stay on a spot in the wind. I mean, spot lock, right? I mean, that's what it's called. So, and it bothered me, and it was hard for me to get back to that spot, because you got this big open water and you're in really deep water, and you run over a big brush pile, and you're like, you see fish on it, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you're trying to get back to it, and you're pedaling against the wind, and that big kayaks don't turn that easy. At least mine doesn't. So,
Cole, what kind of sold you on a trolling motor?
Yeah, I think it was just fun, right? I like to play. I like to try new things out, and I loved going to a pedal drive. Was a game changer. I could never go back to a paddle, right, on flat water.
Yeah.
And so when I did that, the same thing, I wanted to be able to pivot, to turn, to get into a dock slip, right? And then bring myself back out and not have to get the paddle out and do a big U stroke. So, the thing that I started getting curious about this year when it came to motors was, what do we think the future is going to look like, right? Is it going to be one or the other? Is it going to be dual motor setups, right? Right or wrong? I always like to kind of get ahead and understand, how do these manufacturers that build these kayaks that we demand as anglers really start to bring those in. And we've seen that, right? They start putting power plates on everything, so you can link things together. But I think the big shift is coming in hull design, because the reality is that these kayaks, if you want the performance and the stability out of them, they weren't built to put 50 pounds on the nose of them, right? And so how do you start to address that? You're starting to see it with that new native hammer that's coming out. They're starting to really pay attention to how to bring the width of the kayak early in the boat, instead of right at the middle of your seat where your widest point used to be. And they're bringing the backs out as well to handle the capacity stuff. But then you still got to make it a kayak, right? And still have the ability to get shallow, still have the weight down to where you can still pull it into a remote spot. But I think the big thing for me, I'm looking for, I don't know anyone that's doing it, right, is it'd sure be nice to have someone that has one that auto stows and deploys, right? We all got our rope system, pull your rope, pull your motor up on it, as well as, continuing to figure out how to go more hands-free even than the remote. So it was interesting, because I was challenged. I go, well, I've been so involved in the bow, and I welcome questions that people have about the current motors that are out there, and the benefits of it. But then I said, all right, to be fair, I got to try motors off the back of the kayak as well,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, everything's bow motors where it's at if you had to pick one. So I've been able to test the new Garmin Current, so I can answer some questions on that. The Torqeedo, I believe it's the 1104, the 3 horsepower version, and then obviously the NK 180 Pro and the NK 300 as well off the back of the kayak. And I'll tell you guys, I was a little bit wrong. I told myself that this felt old school, that I wasn't going to like it, and obviously you have to go to some type of foot steer setup on them. But I certainly found applications that I would say outshine the bow. Particularly in really skinny water, I was able to hop logs with it, where it's kind of hard to do that with a bow motor that you got to pull up and down. But it was fun because I was able to talk to Garmin's R&D team before the release of the Garmin Current, and a lot of their secrets were kept from me, right? And as they should, they're a big company. But I was sharing a lot of my concerns that I had around the ultimate goal in talking to them was to try to get them to cut the Kraken shaft down and build a lightweight kayak version. Still want that. I still think it would be a cool motor. But in their development, they had picked up something that I think was really interesting, and that's their man overboard tag. You guys heard of that? You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing that I really hit on was, listen, you're going 6 or 7, even off the bow, and I fall over. I just got to hope I'm conscious enough to hit the off button, because that kayak's not stopping at that point. Luckily, when my kayak flipped completely over in that moment, my motor's out of the water, so it couldn't go anywhere.
Man, that's scary.
But I thought that was a really neat innovation that they came up with, is a cordless man overboard tag, and I think that's going to drive a lot of innovation in the fishing industry. The other thing that I love about that motor is the Garmin Current, the foot steer system on it's really neat. Ability to just not have any cables running, that you can push down to go fast, go reverse, but you could treat it like a zero turn mower.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, John was asking about it, so that's why.
Yeah. So, and John, to your point, it's interesting because I have the same issues. If I say, okay, I'm buying one motor, what is it going to be? I'm going all in, buy once, cry once. I'm not fully sold on it, because I would like to see, like most people, that 24, 36 volt, 100-pound thrust option, little more speed.
Yeah.
But again, they're a big company and they're smart, and they don't want to go kick something out there that's dangerous to the average angler. So they're, looking at it, but it's great. The one downside, and this is to you, when you talk about spot lock, is that they do have spot lock. You hit a button and it does, but regardless of what happens when you hit spot lock, the bearing portion of where your motor comes into the water is always going to end up downwind.
Yeah.
So there's confusion. I was reading their review, some of their comments on some of their posts today from Garmin, and people are like, well, is it going to keep me facing into the wind? And on spot lock, for a little bit, until the wind hits your bow and turns you all the way around, but then you're going to be facing downwind. Some guys fish that way. But I tell folks that if that's your sole determining factor, the reality is you pull up to a point, you can't guarantee the wind direction. You can try to play it and get to that side of the point, but just like half the time when you spot lock off of a bank and you're going to be facing out into the main lake and not the shore, because the wind's blowing that direction, the same thing's going to happen off your stern. So it's the same issue, except for those that purely focus on windblown points. But
so I guess on the spot lock being on the back, you just come into the point like you're going into the point with the wind, and it would just reverse, correct, on that, and it would
correct. Yeah, it's going to hold you. So guys that have a swivel seat would have an advantage there.
Oh, yeah.
If in those moments you wanted to be able to turn yourself around, that would be pretty clutch. The thing too that in its name, the Garmin Current, it's really handy for those that like to fish in moving water. Because imagine, when you spot lock, you're upstream, but a lot of guys that do drift style fishing, or they want to be facing downstream but pitching, and just moving along slowly, it keeps that boat oriented downstream, as it had kind of indicated in its name. So I haven't done although I've tested it, I haven't done a full A/B comparison to it. I know speed wise, it's faster than you think for it's called a 40-pound thrust motor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw, was that Derek that had mentioned that his tiller was faster than his Xide 3? That's just physics off of the back, right? You're always going to be more efficient. In fact, the Power Pole was the only bow motor in my lineup that was as fast as my NK300, but I still think my NK300 edged it out off the rear of the Kayak as far as speed goes. And so you don't have to have, if it was that 75, that 24 volt version, that's really what you want as far as speed goes. But for those that, especially those that want something that's just one motor, it's going to be a good option. We'll see what the market thinks of it. I tend to look at it and say, well, it's really competing against the Power Pole, the Garmin Kraken, the Lowrance Ghost, those $3,000 plus motors. And even a Torqeedo can get pretty close to that depending on the battery choice that you go with. So Newport's just on that other side of it that is a lot more affordable. That gives you that power.
I will say every time you crack into that NK300 full blast, it puts a smile on your face every time.
It is.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And then everybody else goes bye-bye. You're like, okay, I chose the right one.
What kind of speeds were you getting out of the Garmin?
So that's a good point. So in the same Kayak that I achieved in the Xide 3 around 4.2, and the Garmin Current was pushing about 5.4 to 5.6 in that Kayak. Again, it's another 12 volt kind of setup. It was so phenomenal for what it is.
Yeah.
And what's really unique is that motor doesn't use a lot of power, meaning that your battery goes a long time with that setup.
Okay.
And that can get a little confusing, and I can get into that, amps versus thrust and how you use it.
And that price point was it $29.99?
Yeah, I tell folks it's more like $3,500 by the time you get the pedals with it, because most people want those wireless pedals.
Yeah.
That come with it.
Yeah, I was kind of looking into that for myself because I want the spot lock, and I always find myself going, I want to be facing the wind, not, does it have reverse on that one?
Instant reverse. So that
instant reverse. Okay.
I appreciate you bringing that up. That is one thing I actually use on my that the Ghost, the Kraken, and the Power Pole have even off the bow, just like Garmin does off the stern, is that I can hit a button and then the propeller spins the opposite way. So if I want to move backwards, I don't have to rotate the head of the motor all the way around to move backwards. I just hit a button and it reverses the propeller.
That's awesome.
So,
how is it? How is it? The depth wise, is it
in the water?
In the water.
Yeah, I set it to the same kind of chine line that I did, so it sets at the same depth as the NK300 off the rear. But it's fairly light. It's a 25-pound motor, which is not that much heavier. It's a tad bit heavier maybe than the NK300, but really not.
Especially on the back.
Yeah. So
and then what does the I was going to say here. Does you have like pulling it up and putting it down? Do you have to have a cable or something for that?
There is a cable system for it, but that is the only cable you have after you plug it in. So everything's networked through a single cable. You do have a stow and deploy cable to pull, but it's pretty effortless. They have a pretty good internal pulley system in it. So it's not as difficult as maybe the Torqeedos or the NK300s. Not that those are terrible. But there is, some risk of when that motor's locked into place. There's similar to your trolling motor up the front, there's a pin that would break if you hit something really hard.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for somebody to kind of dive in, because I know some guys are going to want to run rivers and be able to have that thing just pop up. Which it does. But being the way that it's done, it could take a little more of a beating in that scenario.
I was really excited about that one because I like all the features that they're thinking about, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet. So
I
might give it a year.
I think that's a fair bet. See, I want to see more direct. I wish that was a motor I could have had set up in parallel with something else to demo. Maybe we'll get a dealer that's going to get a few in and let us have some fun with it. But I think it really comes down to it's so much better to work a bank with, in my opinion. Just sit there and just barely make adjustments. You don't think about it. But when it comes to spot lock, if getting spun around on that scenario is going to be a pain, that's also something to think about. But it's interesting because all that being said, if you're trying to make the decision of bow versus stern, I'm giving you such a political answer and saying, well, it just depends what you want to do. Depends on your budget, though. You can get into a great kind of GPS motor for, $1,500 to $1,800 off the bow. That's going to be pretty similar. You can actually be a little bit cheaper off the stern with the Newport style motors. But at the end of the day, don't forget your battery, right? That's going to be your most important powerhouse on it. And think through that, how you're going to use it, where you're going to put it, and go from there. So for you guys, what size battery do you run on your Xide 3s?
100 amp hour.
100.
Have you ever had a tournament where you ran out of power?
Never.
Yeah, but only because of my own stupidity.
Because you forgot to charge it the night before?
And it just happened to me like 2 weeks ago. What happened was the battery cables were corroded where they were soldered together. And so I upgraded my I took the charger and cut the ends off and put the Anderson connectors on the battery and Anderson connectors on the charger. And I plugged it in and walked away and came back like an hour later. I was like, wow, that charged fast because it didn't charge at all. And so when I got out, I noticed the red light was on about a couple hours into my fishing trip. And I was like, okay, well, crap. So I just shut it off and shut off my motor and pedaled. That's why I'll never go without pedals because that's happened to me multiple times. Also, when I was down at Lake Havasu, I went like 4 hours and thought I could go another 4 hours the next day, and it was 30-mile-an-hour wind, and I was on spot lock and going way too fast. And I went like 6 miles in that thing, I swear, and ran out of battery. Luckily, had someone pick me up at the next boat ramp, so I didn't have to pedal back that far. But I think I want to get 150 amp hour. But the main thing is just to make sure that it actually charges for me. So,
yeah. Well, do you tap in anything else to that battery, or do you have a separate electronics?
I do run. The only thing I run on it is my GoPro, which does suck some juice on an 8-hour day, but I don't think it's terrible. So I do run my GoPro off that 100 amp hour.
And I've gone 14 hours, I think, on my trolling motor. I started at Perry one day. I fished all of Perry, left there about 1, went to Clinton, finished down my day. I got done like 8 at night, and I still had juice in that 100 amp hour from Xi 3. So
that's what I tell folks is
it's impressive.
Don't worry. If you're fishing in a tournament scenario or an all-day deal, 100 amp hour on a 12-volt setup is normally plenty. And to give you an example of that, I believe if you were to run the Xide 3 all out, which I think it has 10 steps to it, similar to the Tarova, it's going to pull about 42 amps an hour at full draw. That's 2 hours running full speed. Well, nobody does that. You may think you're making a long run, but you're not. And so when you start to look at it, I always tell folks, every motor manufacturer will have a chart that will show you at what step, whether it's step 1 through 10 or 10% of throttle to 100%, it's going to show you how many amps it uses. That's the best math. To give you an example, I only run a 60 amp hour battery on my power pole, and I know that I've hit the 18-hour mark on it before and have not ran out of juice. And the difference there is it can pull a lot more. It pulls around 55 amps full tilt just because it's giving a lot to it, but it pulls like half an amp at my fishing speed. So basically nothing. We're on a 36 setup versus a 12-volt setup that's pulling, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So don't think that you need the same amperage if you're bumping to a 36 or a 24 that you had in 12. Look at those breakdown charts.
and I have a 100 amp hour 36 volt in my NK300.
Yep.
And usually I'm 100% going from spot to spot, and I think 42% is the most I've ever ran down to. I've got Bluetooth on it, so
What amp did you say that? How many amps was
100
that?
amp hour.
Holy cow! What's that battery weigh?
It's about I don't know. I want to say about 60 pounds, man. It's
That's
the
what I thought.
same as a car battery. I mean,
Yeah,
but I put it under my seat to kind of even the weight out. But
love it.
That's
but
why I like my
I could go to the next state probably with it.
Yeah.
Tim got me on them. It's the Lifetime
Yeah.
batteries, the lithium batteries. I got the 100 amp hour mini.
Yeah,
It's 19 pounds.
Yep.
So that's really nice. But I regret not getting Bluetooth for it because I think that's it's more of a assurance thing. Like
Yeah.
I've only ran out of battery juice twice because of my own stupidity and not charging it properly. So I think it was just the assurance of saying, "Oh, I got plenty of juice. I can make this run as fast as I want." Would be nice to look at, So
I always recommend that. I know, like I have some amped outdoor lithiums as well. I've run many different batteries. Obviously, lithium. I don't want to glass past that for the viewers here, but in a kayak, weight is everything. So you really have to force yourself to go lithium. I'd rather you get a smaller lithium than go and spend on like an SLA style battery for you. But the weight matters. So my 60 amp battery is still 40 pounds. 36 volt battery, and it's part of the equation that I tell people to think about of where your weight is, what your boat can handle from a safety standpoint. But most folks in a 36 volt application in tournament, 60 amps is going to be plenty.
Oh yeah. I still have 70% battery left at the end of the day. So
same with that 12 volt, 100 amp is plenty. It's like you said, user error. But my other recommendation that I noticed and talked to another guy that had an Xide 3. He had the same boat as me. And I said, hey, want to race as a joke. And I was over a half a mile faster than him. According to our graph speeds, we had the exact same motor. I'm thinking, is it trim? Is it cavitating? It had to do with his wire gauge that he used.
Oh, really?
So I encourage folks that when you take a motor, especially when you go up to the 24 or 36 volt, you really should be pushing that 6 gauge marine wire. And I think he was running kind of a cheaper 10 gauge wire on his Xide 3 and cheaper plugs. And you realize each one of those connection points can restrict the continuity of the motor and actually give you less performance, which also drains your battery faster. So I always encourage folks, if you get one, make sure that you get marine wire. Always go down, a step. So if it calls for 8, there's nothing wrong with going to 6. Still stay within the ranges, but also pay good money for your connection points, because the real error that I've seen is, belted plugs on a kayak. Polypropylene kayaks are also very flammable. So I encourage people to, I'd rather you spend your money there than on a better motor, because that's what's going to give you better performance. And so I've found that I've tried a lot of different plugs. I like the Anderson plugs. They're coming from the factory for Newport for a reason. I've also found one hack is that you can buy the aerosol kind of spray dielectric grease. It's considered food grade. It comes in a little can. It hits your, even your graph inputs with that. We don't realize how much moisture gets into stuff.
Oh, I do.
So
I've had issues.
yeah, it's but I've been using Battery Tender makes a plug. It's a really unique screw lock system. It's very secure when it connects. But I always tell folks, if you're running a motor, you get out, remember, just go grab your connection points, the connection point to your battery, the connection point of your trolling motor. And if it's hotter than what it should be at ambient temp hitting it, you need to kind of get after that and change it out. So
I think old Johnny boy there, I think he went down and picked up a new kayak, didn't he, Tony?
So he said, I don't know if he wanted everybody to know that, but I guess the cat's out of the bag.
We don't have to say what it is. Unless John wants to say it.
Yeah. John, I hope you got that, and you have to let everybody know what you got.
Yeah.
I have we've been out here for a long time. I don't want to take
Yeah.
too much more of your time, Cole, but it's such an interesting topic,
It
and I
is
hope
very interesting.
everybody's really enjoying this. And I think this is something that we can share. For we've always get those questions on what kind of kayak should I buy. Tim and I really want to do one on get some people on here with different kayaks experiences, why they bought it. But a couple other things is people can just buy the kayak with the motor right on it, like the Old Towns. And what do you think about? Do you think there should be any thought on pairing your motor with your graph, such as a Garmin with your graph, like for following contour lines, things like that? Do you think there's any value in that? Or I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but moving your kayak when it's on spot, like I think Scott talks about his Scott lock. I'm going to coin that phrase.
That's the new one, Scott Lock.
Scott Lock.
Spot lock on his Old Town with the Lowrance, and he can like click it twice, and it moves over like so many feet each time he clicks it. Is that something you think people should consider?
I think that's what we're going to see is the future is very similar to what Apple's done in the industry of connectivity. I think that's what you're going to see Garmin do. You're going to see the likes of Lowrance do, to where you're kind of going to be holden by your graph choice to your motor choice, because there's going to be too many features that you don't want to give up switching between them. I will say that, for example, my power pole, I have it connected to ProNav, which is an application. So I can set on my graph, I can say I want to go from point A to point B, and it actually will route me and just self-drive me there. That's neat. I don't know that I need it. I don't know that I can't, at the speeds I'm going, can't just make little adjustments or heading lock. But the ability, I think the real trick are for those that end up getting like the Garmin Puck, to be able to, when you mark a point, you know exactly where that spot is, not just a general 5-foot area.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens if you don't have kind of that GPS puck that, Garmin and Lowrance has. You don't know if you're facing, the right direction. It's generally where you say the brush pile is. And then the ability to go to your graph and click that, and it takes your boat right over the exact spot, is going to be more in kind of what I think the future is going to hold for the connectivity of it. Garmin's will do that. The Garmin Current does that out of the box. It's networked, NEMA capable.
Oh, that's cool.
The Lowrance will as well. Most of them all have the ability. It's a network cable you tie in. Is it going to catch you more fish? Meh, I don't know. There's going to be guys that whip everybody's butt that have a paddle and good fishing sense. But I do think the future of the decision is that used to be paddle versus pedal, right? And now we're at this cusp of pedal versus power. And I'm the guy that still holds on to liking both. I'm with you. I want that backup plan. I want to be able to go skinny and strip the boat down, but still not have to pick up a paddle.
Yep.
I think that line's going to start getting blurred as people get more confident in what's going to happen. So you're going to see more of the Old Town style. I think that's a phenomenal setup they have with the foot steering integrated into the motor too.
Yeah, it really is.
But they're getting passed up if they can't figure out the wireless pedal system, and they will. Most likely someone will be able to buy the Current and the Garmin unit and slap that in the middle of the kayak. They'll start coming out with kits for it.
If that comes out in 36 volt, I'll probably get it. Honestly.
I know.
I will want it.
Which one?
The Current.
Oh yeah.
I'll have that one if it goes to 36 volt. But John got an XTR, so
yeah.
He's gonna be fishing.
Put anything you want on that boat. You want to put a 5-horse on the back? We can give that a shot.
He'll be fishing off the front of the boat. He'll have his rods up there, and
I don't think he has to worry about the weight of the motor on that one.
No.
So I can't wait to see it. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Isn't that one of them? Don't they have one like the XTR with a pedal drive now too?
I'd imagine they're going to roll that out at some point. Yeah. It's not much of a mold change for them to drop their bona fide pedal setup into it.
I think the biggest setback why a lot of people don't run the Old Town is it just is not that fast. Doug, if you're still watching, I'd be curious. I gave him an extra RC prop. I'm curious. You have to let us know if it's any good.
They say another mile an hour probably. So
yeah, depending on the weight of the kayak and the person and all that. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing with like they're slow. I mean, they really are slow.
well, it's the pedal drive not being there for me. So
Yeah.
the reason I got a trolling motor, the whole reason I was at Cedar Bluffs and I was backing up and I was going real fast because I hit a tree and it snapped. My pedal drive snapped. What was the wind that day? 15 plus miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it pushed me up against the trees. I'm out there with my paddle, my PA-14. And like, I'm starting to tear up. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I tie up around a tree. I get on Amazon. I'm like, trolling motor? Go to one. I did right there on the water. I freaking ordered everything right there. And I was like, I'm done with this. And yeah, that was a bad day, but still got my limit, but that was a bad day.
Was there anything else? Other questions?
Any
Stuff
other
to
questions?
talk about, Cole? Is awesome.
I mean, I think we've hit this smattering. Yeah. I'm an open book. If anyone from the club or any of your listeners have questions, to hit me up. And again, I'm just sharing my experience over the last year, really just trying to use everything that's out there, seeing what's capable and what the future might hold for kayaks. So I'm not, again, particular to one side or the other. I think they all have their value. My encouragement, though, is the safety piece. I'm going to hit that one more time, right? Definitely figure out how you can be at least 75% of the weight capacity of your boat all in. You're going to need that on a day that, just like Milford was on Friday, you go to pre-fish and realize it's a little bit hairy out there.
Mm-hmm.
But then also make sure that you're really setting yourself up to power it effectively, kind of understand where everything's at, but then have fun. And so courage, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on what they see, but you want to go fast, go 36, you want a little more efficiency and lightweight, the 12 volts in that range, but there's a host of options and just pick your budget.
I'd be curious how because I'm really interested in the Garmin current, and I'm really interested is if pedaling while you're moving forward, it takes you any faster than like a Hobie.
Probably.
So there's actually a speed at which you reduce that, and that's around 5.5 miles an hour. So if the motor itself is taking you to that speed, typically you won't be able to pedal to add any thrust value to it. You'll actually add more resistance and drag.
Well, you just know everything, don't you, Cole?
I'm talking about prop driven more than I am fin driven. So maybe you can flipper flapper your way faster than someone can on a prop driven setup.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Looks like Doug had something.
Yep.
So that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that I gotta drive one around, and I actually felt it was more stable than my Hobie PA12. Austin let me get in his and drive it around a little bit. Stability wise, I didn't like the narrowness of it, but like I stepped on it and didn't even move, and I'm like, and I'm not a small guy, and the amazing, it really is truly a stable kayak. But I want to go fast. No, I'm just kidding. And I think honestly, motor, kayak, all around quality, good company. I think that was my second choice. The Old Town is probably one of the best kayaks to get and go.
Yeah, I agree that they've done a really good job in their new lineup. So, and mine is just degree is in not having any answers and just sitting there trying to try everything on and see what works. But it's fun though to play, and because at the end of the day, I love the community of kayak anglers because we do a lot of DIY, right? But at the same time, we're spending our money at times $1,000, $3,000, $5,000 on the things we put on our plastic boats, and so we kind of want to make sure that we understand what's out there and what the capabilities are. So I wish we had more dealer networks in the state of Kansas that allowed demo days and things like that. But I also want to encourage folks that come out to tournaments, if there's something that you see somebody set up, I know most every one of these tournaments, if you ask them, hey, when you get back to the ramp, can I just take one quick lap? Most guys are going to be like, absolutely, here you go. You know, in fact, I'll back my trailer down. You can help me put it on, right?
After you pull your baits off.
Yeah.
I offered, somebody wanted to do that, and I said, yeah, just go sit it, and I'll just drive you around with my remote.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do that.